Good evening, everybody. I'm Ford Spalding, Chair of the Community Center Building Committee, and let me just poll the board as to who is here. Ruth Townsend,
Yes.
Dick Malcolm,
Yes.
Dave Billings,
Yes.
and Barry Golden.
Yes.
Thank you. To start the meeting, I'd like to have just a moment of silence and remembrance of our Selectman Bob Springett, in an expression of gratitude for his service to the citizens of Dover. Thank you. There is going to I think most of you know, but there is a service for Bob this Friday at 3 p.m. at the Dover Church. For those that may not know, it's the church that located closest to Dunkin' Donuts. It's a small church, so if you're going, you might want to try to be there a little early. We'll miss Bob, but we appreciate his service. First order of business is approval of minutes of November 20, 2023. I'll accept a motion to approve.
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Were they sent out? I didn't see them.
Oh. Probably not. Well,
Approved.
we always could do it the next meeting if you want.
No, that's fine. I just wondered if I missed something.
No, I think that's my negligence. So the motion has been made in second. Is there, let me poll the board. Dave Billings,
Sure.
Ruth Townsend,
Yes.
Dick Malcolm,
Yes.
Barry Goldman,
Yes.
and Ford Spalding, yes. Next is a construction progress report. Al, we'll turn the meeting over to you and you can run through it.
Thank you, Ford, and hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. The only item that's going to be different from the typical agenda, it's going to be the director's office. So we're going to talk about some of the updates there. As far as the construction progress, so during the month of November, which is the month that we're approving the contractor's payment for excavations for the gym and the pavilion building foundations continued. Once those were complete, the formwork, reinforcing, and concrete placement for the pavilion foundations, as well as the fire protection vault, started. And within the 1910 building, the building was shored up inside, and the demolition for the south side of the facade, in order to receive the new building, started and completed as well on the 20th. So we're in what's the 11th of December right now. So since December, some of the progress that took place, we placed the concrete for the pavilion as well as the fire protection vault foundation walls. We also placed the foundation walls for the elevator. At the 1910 building, some of the foundation stabilizing took place. I'm going to show you some pictures of that, and we're going to discuss that a little bit. As well as in the 1910 building, there's a couple of new openings that are going on, and so those started. And the building pad preparation for the gym building also started. Currently, waterproofing, insulation, and backfilling for the pavilion and the fire protection vault foundations is ongoing. And the 1910 building, new window openings are also ongoing. The gym building footings just started today. Some of the activities are going to be upcoming. It's going to be the footings, formwork, reinforcing, and placement for the gym building, starting up the underground MEPs, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, as well as the footings for the 1910 building. Do we have any questions?
Well, you're going to go into the footings when you show the pictures. Is that correct? And the issues
Yes.
there, please?
Yep, we're going to show pictures of those.
Al, compared to their last schedule, which I think was October. Yeah, it's 10-3. They look like they're several weeks behind schedule on their foundation. Are we pushing off steel for, I guess it's the gym and the pavilion, or are they going to be able to make up some time?
Yeah, well, we were hoping to make up some time during, right now there's only, there was only one, essentially one sub on site, which is the Capital Concrete. They worked last Saturday. They were supposed to get an additional crew to help, make up some of the time. We're still about, I want to say 3 to 4 weeks behind schedule. We are still very much working on that schedule. There's a few moving parts there. One of them being, the asbestos change order and how many days they get for that. I think we have a good path forward on that. We just need to touch base on that again.
No, I understand the asbestos push things off. I'm just trying to understand where we currently are in relationship to the overall schedule. They have steel. Take a look at it. Starting, they were going to start it in January 16th, start the erection of the pavilion. Is that still possible? I mean, it's only a couple weeks away.
It is. That's still my understanding of when steel is going to start arriving. It's mid-January.
Okay.
I can go back and confirm, but that's I think it was last week when I talked to the project manager about the steel delivery, and I heard it was going to be mid-January.
Okay. Thank you.
My expert, they're well aware of our concern and where we are, and when our conversations with them, they seem confident that they're going to be able to make up the time. It's obviously to their advantage to make up the time, so we're working on it.
Okay.
Some of the information has been a little slow coming in, and that's concerning.
Al, does the 3 to 4 weeks, is that inclusive of the 17 days for abatement?
Not necessarily. So I would say about 3 weeks. If we don't include the 17 days, if we do include the 17 days, it's going to be closer to 4, just over a month on that.
Well, the 17 days are a contractual issue. It's really where they are now in terms of their progress. I mean, it looks like they're, based on their schedule, they're like only 2 or 3 weeks. Contractually, we may give them more time, but that's kind of a separate issue.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Any more
Yeah.
questions on schedule or construction progress?
Well, why don't you go through the photos?
Oh, okay. All right. So let's look at some pictures. So at the beginning of November, the excavations were pretty much done at that point. As you can see in the picture here, this is the footprint of the pavilion building. By mid-November, the footings were formed and the rebar was pretty much good to go. I think they poured the day after this for the footings. And then picture on the left shows what it looks like today. So the footings, foundation walls are complete, and they're currently putting the rigid insulation on the inside. That's the pink stuff that you see here. And then moving on, so on the other side of the site where the gym is gonna go, again, the beginning of November, bottom of the excavation pretty much complete. And by the middle of November, they placed the first part of the footings as well as the pad for the fire protection tank, and they installed the fire protection tank. And then the picture on the right shows what it looks like. I think this was Thursday of last week. So you can see the foundation wall for the fire protection vault is complete. They're also putting some of the rigid insulation as well as the waterproofing on the opposite side.
And this is a very extensive process, and I keep liking to remind people that it's because we don't have water in the town is for fire protection. If you ever have an opportunity to try to push this town to bring in water, that would save this town a lot of money, and also the development areas around town.
As far as the 1910 building, they started the shoring on the inside around the middle of November. And by the 20th of November, the building was all shored up. and they had demolished the facade so that they can receive the new building. I mentioned earlier that they're cutting up the openings for the new windows. These are some of the pictures. The picture on the right is from today, showing that on the east side, they opened up in the brick wall for the new windows.
How's the foundations looking? I mean, we're trying to put new windows in there. And it looks like rubble foundation. Are they gonna be able to flash that in?
That's a great question. Al, go ahead.
Yeah, so I mean, so the next slide was actually, we were gonna go over some of the foundation concerns that we had with the rubble foundation.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of discussion on this over the last couple of weeks, and I just wanted to bring you all up to speed on what's going on there. So as you can see, these pictures are both from the south side. That's where the big opening is for the new building. And you can kind of see that some concrete was poured up against it. The geotechnical engineer looked at it. He thinks, the contractor poured it, just in an effort to stabilize that foundation. Geotechnical engineer looked at it. He thinks that it probably is helping, stabilize that foundation. There's currently an open request for information on there's a footing going on the picture on the left. It's actually gonna look similar to the one on the right. So the contractor's trying to figure out how they can pour that footing with underneath essentially that rubble foundation. Now the reason why I want to bring this up to all of you is because there have been a number of meetings, phone calls, emails over the last few weeks as it relates to this issue. The structural engineer has requested an additional services for $10,000 because essentially both the structural engineer and the geotechnical engineer believe that had the contractor not initially excavated as aggressively as they did, which they essentially excavated below the bottom of that rubble foundation and therefore compromising its structure, we wouldn't need all of that additional communication, these RFIs, and looking at the concrete work that they did here. And I agree with that. That's it was a means and methods, but just by the way that the excavations were done, we're now looking at potentially needing underpinning, for the footing on the left side. So that's it. It's an ongoing process, and the structural engineer and the geotechnical engineer are both looking at that request for information right now. So we're very much in that process.
Yeah, but we're requesting. This could be an area of further discussion because it was their era. I think I can say that. So we're working through that. When you say we're working through it is that who's obligated on this one? So
Okay.
and I would say Al has it well under control. Dick and I have been involved throughout this process, so we're well aware of it.
Do we have to take any extra steps in order to make sure that the foundation is not compromised?
I think right now, the way that it is, both the geotechnical and structural engineer have looked at it. They, especially a geotechnical, because they're the ones that are looking at this rubble. And they think that right now it's stable. The question is when they do the footing that's gonna go on this left picture, how do we do that while maintaining the integrity of this foundation wall? And right now, the entire building is shored up. There's really not a lot of weight on those walls other than the weight of the walls themselves. So from that perspective, everything's okay now.
Barry, if you look at the picture, 1211, if you go back.
Which one was it?
The one we were at the film. There on the right there, you'll see the concrete. They added all that concrete on the right. And they're working with a structural engineer who's been out numerous times, keeping an eye on it. They also are measuring. They have a way of looking at whether the building's moving at all, and that's under constant surveillance. So they are looking at that. So they've done a good job from that point of view. I hadn't seen this foundation since I guess I wasn't out there since Thursday, but so that's a big help seeing that in place. But structural engineers are on top of this.
So, Al, is M. O'Connor accepting of their responsibility for this? And, because of their means and how they went about this? That's their
So
problem,
you know,
not our problem.
That's a great question. Right now, M. O'Connor's on they're saying that this is unforeseen conditions. I did mention, what the structural engineers and geotechnical engineers, stance is on this. But it's something that it's gonna come, that whole issue of, hey, we wouldn't need to be here, if, that's gonna be that's gonna be part of the answer to the request for information. And so ultimately, I want that to come from the structural and the geotechnical engineer. And so that, we're anticipating that being part of the answer with the request for information.
But now it was the process of clearing out, as you know, noticed, clearing out the soil and all that from the building and how that was done. That's what occurred. That's what occurred.
Yeah, did we give them a bottom of footing elevation? I mean,
We
are they
didn't know what the
that
bottom
out?
of-
Well, we knew it was down so we knew where the slab was.
Yeah, so
uh,
this
And we're
Drove-
putting
Oh,
new
sorry.
under slab plumbing there.
Yeah, so the top of the footing was meant to go at the bottom of the rubble foundation. But
Yep.
they were supposed to kind of dig pilot holes to find out where the bottom of that foundation wall was, because we don't have existing drawings and it changes as it goes around the building. So they just kind of excavated all away from the building rather than kind of very strategically excavating at the points of the footings that would allow them to say, hey, it's a lot shallower than we were expecting. The structural drawings have notes accommodating for the fact that if it needs to be higher, it can be higher. It just needs to be at the bottom of the rubble foundation, wherever that was.
And they probably should, quite frankly, instead of using the equipment they did, they probably should have used a shovel and because it's sand. It was easy to operate in. You're not dealing with clay soil or anything like that. It's very sandy soil. So the right thing to do in retrospect, from my point of view, was to use hand shovel. And it's
Yeah,
not a big area either, so.
Yeah, and then back to what Al has been dealing with them is, essentially when that's discovered, when you discover where the bottom of the rubble foundation is, where the footings need to go, if they felt they needed to go lower is when they're supposed to be putting together an underpinning plan, to strategically map out how they plan to excavate around these foundations and install the footings. And we did not get that. And it just was basically, this is what we have. So
the footing on the picture on the left is that's concrete, right? That's existing concrete?
No, so the concrete
That's new.
that's
I'm
yeah,
trying
so
to
that's
tell. That's a new kind of footing that they cast.
So it's not quite a footing. This is just concrete that they pour up against the rubble foundation in an effort to stabilize it a little bit. The footing goes underneath. It's supposed to go underneath that.
So that's an external. That what we're looking at is an external concrete.
So they just kind of,
yeah, it's like a parge almost.
Right.
wow.
Yeah.
And it goes below that, or that's the bottom of the footing right there.
They did pour a section below that, and that's part of the question with the request for information, because they did that without without direction.
The existing foundation wall doesn't have a footing. It's just sitting on dirt.
Correct.
Correct.
That's right.
Okay.
But that what you're seeing there was, as he said, was not
Yeah,
done.
no, they got to do
Correction,
something
they
or it
just
just
did it.
fall apart.
Mhm.
Wow. Okay.
And I think it's important that we've had this discussion. I think it's good that we have. It's important.
Yeah,
But we need to
doesn't
fix
move, so
what?
The building hasn't moved, so.
Building hasn't moved and it hasn't moved at all, but you know,
Mhm.
when I first saw it, it looked very different than it does right now. And Dick and I were there and I felt like I needed to back away. And I was just hoping we weren't going to have any vibrations in the earth.
Yeah,
Is
That was
there,
gentlemen and ladies, that was my imagination.
is there a potential ad services from FMA for this?
Mhm.
I mean, I don't think we've had to be involved as much as the structural engineers or whatnot. I mean, we always keep tabs on things like this as we're going. And I just wanted to clarify that the ad service from structural is T&M. So, you know, they mean to only bill what they spend time on. It's not the full amount.
Like I can
But
tell you,
they-
FMA has been out there during this
Yeah,
whole
they-
process.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where, you know, if it seems like it's taking more than a few RFIs, obviously we would want to talk about it. But for us, it's a little bit different for structural engineers. I've been talking to Al about this. They basically they do not have a lot of fee usually applied to CA because their work is done very early on, right? They look at steel shops, they look at a few foundation things, and then they don't really come back out until towards the end. And existing conditions and verifying existing conditions is typically not part of their contract and is something that they would ask for an additional service should it come up in construction. So that's how their contract is kind of structured.
Right. Janice, who are we working with, just so people have a name that they understand?
Yeah, LA Fees is their name.
yeah. Okay. Are they have any issues with the viability of this existing wall? Now that we have it all opened up?
It's they don't, as long as
Okay.
things are done correctly and you know they have initially responded to the RFI asking them to let them know if the footing can be placed where they had it. There was some questions of doweling which they do not think will work, so they've kind of
Yeah.
pushed that back. Yeah,
Yeah, there's nothing to delve into. You just break
Yeah.
it apart.
yeah, they were
Okay.
showing the doweling into, I guess, the smaller piece of concrete below, but they're basically saying that that creates a cold joint at the footing.
Yep.
So
Well,
Yep, and as far as a geotechnical engineer, they're working on a time and material. And so what I've asked them to do is just to track the time associated with all this stuff separately, just in case, you know, we'll see how things play out. So they're tracking that separately.
okay.
All right,
All right.
continue.
We talked a little bit about schedule. So again, we're still working on the schedule. I'm hoping we can figure that out over the next couple of weeks. And you know, again, 3 to 4 weeks behind schedule right now, and subject to change. On the budget report, we had a couple of budget transfers this month. 2 of them were I briefly brought up last time. We had some savings with the asbestos monitoring. We also had some savings in the owner's project manager's line item. So we transferred those savings over to the owner's contingency. We also transferred from the owner's contingency to the architects the $9,000 that they were authorized to proceed during the Board of Selectmen's meeting to study the lounge space. So that was another transfer. Those are captured in column B. We're gonna go over the invoices in column D1 next. And moving over to column E, we have $177,000 in potential costs to the project. These are costs that have not been approved yet. So these are made up of, you know, change orders. One of them is the structural engineer's additional services proposal that I just mentioned. Hasn't been approved yet, but we want to try to capture all the known exposures. If we look over to column I at the bottom, the 87%, that is the forecasted contingency, worst case scenario, if all of the known potential changes were approved. that's where we would be with the overall contingency. Do we have any questions on the budget? All right, I'm gonna go over the
87% is gonna be spent. Or that's what's remaining.
remaining, yes.
That's remaining, I hope.
Yeah,
Remaining.
it's just.
Yeah.
Okay,
So the next slide I have is a change order contingency log. So this is broken down into two sections. So we have the ones that are related to construction at the top, and the ones that I call soft costs, which basically, you know, like architect fees, you know, other owners, consultants, at the bottom. Anything highlighted, and so beyond that, they're broken down between the ones that have been approved and the ones that are pending, so the potential changes. Anything in yellow, it's item changes from the last month. Everything else you know we've presented already. So we have two fire protection pending change orders that are pretty close to being approved. We talked about one of these last month. I'm waiting on a couple of clarifications on some of the markups. And then last month I also,
can we go over those?
sure.
Yeah, I took a quick look. I'm not understanding why there's any additional sprinklers. What has changed in the plans?
Nothing's changed in the plans. The fire protection is a delegated design. So you know, the architect's scope of work when it comes to fire protection is, you know, it's schematic.
Yeah, I know that it's a hard bid. The contractor bid plans and specs, delegated design. So unless we change the design, he owns this fire protection.
So I think what happened is in our kind of complicated roof areas, like in the community room, they showed a sprinkler count, which wasn't back checked to what, you know, all of the different geometry and everything within the space when they actually ran it. The engineer who has to sign off on it because it's their delegated design, right? So when they ran it through the geometry, they felt it needed more heads than what they were showing. And then we also kind of later in the design added a few soffits as kind of design features, which weren't seen in the drawings.
But those were in the document, in the bid document.
The soffits are there, but they didn't show a head specifically in the soffit. And the soffits are wide enough that they would require adding a head to it.
Well, but the specs require the contractor to have worked that out. You don't have to show it.
They do, yeah.
So I would push back that I think that unless we change the design, the sprinkler contractor has to do it per code.
Engineer it for their bid.
Yeah. Well, it's not engineering for a bit, but you know, unless there's something really unique. That's a lot of heads for 7,000.
I agree with that. I mean, when this first started out, they told me, oh, if it was only, you know, 5 extra heads, which happens typically on jobs, we don't even bill for it. And I don't think we're that much over that. What are we at? Like 11 heads or something?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so yeah, I would just go back and see how they come back, because it's unusual that you're getting an ad for unless you change the design.
So is that Collier's job to go back?
Yeah, I mean, I would talk to the contractor. I mean, yeah, I think we can go back.
Yeah,
We can go back on that.
Denise, yeah.
Yeah, we can go back on that one.
Thanks, Dave.
Okay.
Yeah, the other one that's highlighted in yellow, PCO number 5, that's for is for a transfer grill that was added. That's something that's, you know, recommended when you have a VRF system, and that's up, you know, in the offices, the smaller rooms. So they recommend, you know, for ventilation, they recommend, you know, I think we had designed a plenum, but you know, the plenum wouldn't work with the, you know, existing wood structure of the 1910 building. And so we really needed a, you know, ducted transfer grill, and that's what that's for. Any questions on that?
No, that's fine.
General conditions is something that we're still working on. What I did is I asked the contractor to submit the general conditions back up as a cost of the work, as opposed to how they initially did it, which is taking their general conditions in the schedule values and divided it by the contract duration. And so they're working on that right now.
Okay,
Fire
when do you think
protection.
we might get resolution?
I haven't heard back. I
Okay.
I reminded them via email
This is-
late last week, and
Okay,
This has not been a quick process on their side.
no, of course not.
mm. The next one, the fire protection valve, that's something that we're working with the fire department on. We're actually meeting with them tomorrow. And what that is, it's essentially the two 30,000 gallon tanks. They weren't required to have isolation valves per code, but that's something that the subcontractor recommended, just in case something happened with one of the tanks, you can isolate the other tank and the other tank can still service the building. And also if something were to happen where you gotta drain one tank, you don't have to drain both, 60,000 gallons worth of water at the same time. You can just drain one. So again, we're working with the fire department on that one. They did, again, it's optional, but the fire department did say that that's something that they want. And we're just trying to figure out how to do the open and close the valves, which are like 15 feet below ground.
When are you gonna have that meeting tomorrow?
Tomorrow, what time was that? 10:30, I think, or 11 in the morning. Yeah, it's after the OAC
I think it
meeting.
was, yeah, it's at 11 or 11:30. That rings a bell to me.
But it's after our meeting at 9:30.
The fence replacement, that's something that the abutter requested. That's something that I think we decided we can, just hold up on it just to see where we're on contingency at the end of the project. And if it's something that, we want to proceed with, we can decide that at that point.
Yeah, and I think that's really George Doherty who's requested that. Probably an okay request, but I really think that this is one of our last decisions that we make on this project.
Is that a real number or is that just an estimate?
That's a real number because we have a unit cost for fencing in the contract. So that's based on the unit cost.
So this is just black chain link?
Yes, yeah.
All right.
And then
I'm just wondering, if that couldn't be something that's done after the project is completed, and might be able to be done less expensively too. So I just think that.
There'll be a lot of fencing at the end, so.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Let's see what happens. It's not an it's the request isn't that bad. It's just what's the best way to pay for it.
Yep.
The last item is the estimated construction cost for the director's office. So I just added that in there to capture it within the potential cost.
But that's purely a big estimate because it hasn't been designed and we don't know where it's going to go in the first place. So we have
Correct.
3 options. So
That
and we'll
is correct.
talk about that a little later.
Yeah, and then within the soft costs, we have the additional services associated with the director's office. And then we have the savings that I mentioned earlier that we transfer over to the owner's contingency. As far as pending changes, the next phase for the director's, for the director's office for FMA, about $12,000 estimated. That's to produce the actual construction documents once we decide what option we're gonna go with. And then the other one that we talked about is the structural engineers, additional services for the foundation. Again, those two are pending.
And again, in terms of it's not what we decide, this is come down as a direction from the Board of Selectmen. So the selectmen ultimately will decide. We're going to talk about it shortly, but we'll make recommendations, but whether they accept our recommendations or not, that's up to them. And we're not in the business of deciding whether they need a director or not. That's not our purview. Our purview is our recommendation is where it's going to go, what makes the most sense from our point of view. And they may have a different one and they get the last vote. So
Any questions on the change order log?
Hmm.
All right, invoices. We have 6 invoices. We have the contractor's invoice for November for 469,000. Most of that is general conditions, foundations, formwork, reinforcing concrete placement, the fire protection tank itself, some submittals, as well as site work.
Do we have
We
an
have-
updated cash flow from O'Connor?
An updated, well, we have the cash flow. Yeah, we have the cash flow that they put together at the beginning of the project. We don't have an updated one yet, but I can ask them to provide one.
Yeah, because based on that, they're substantially behind. where
Yep,
they-
I'll ask them to update it.
Okay,
Could you do that tomorrow at the meeting?
Yep, so right here.
Well, should we be waiting for that to approve?
no, because you're paying for work in place. This is just kind of a check on where they are.
So these were, Al, you're approving these numbers? You've examined them and,
I have. Yep. So
Okay.
I reviewed all of these and they seem to be in conformance with the contract document. So I think yeah, I'm okay with these.
And the question was asked is, should we be distributing the backup before the meeting? As you all know, it's on the Colliers site portal, and we recommended that you go through that portal before this meeting.
Yeah, I'll just kind of, can you send us an updated link before each
Mhm.
meeting? Just.
Yeah, I can certainly do that.
Yeah,
no,
like,
Yeah, so I approve these as I go. So, I keep them in that folder real time. And so, some of these I get the day before the building committee meeting. So, if you go there 2 days before the building committee meeting, one of these might not be there. So just giving you a heads up.
Okay.
So this is the latest that's up.
Why don't we do it twice? One, when we send out the agenda, we can include it. I can include that in the agenda. And then the second is we do it like the day before the meeting, or as close as that we can. Okay.
Construction. Yeah, looks like you just have construction in there.
Yeah. So, and I can show you where those are again.
No, I'm just opening the file. I got it.
Okay.
It's the same file.
Say that again, David.
It's all, the only thing I see in here is O'Connor's rec. Even under FMA's invoice.
I
opened
see.
it. It's the
Yeah.
same- It's the
You know what,
same
so-
file.
Yeah, that's because I keep the invoices within the building committee meeting, but
And
actually that's a good
payments?
point. I should probably. The payments is just for the contractor, but I could also keep those payments
Okay.
there.
No, as long as I know. This
So
is
if
the
you go
invoice.
to meetings,
Gotcha.
building committee, the last one, invoices, that's where you see the invoices.
Al,
Okay.
why don't we do this? I think probably, and I need it also. I think send out this is how you get into it. This is where you go.
Mhm.
Type of thing.
Sounds good. I can do that.
So I'll accept a motion to approve that we are recommending for payment of $538,373.20. This is a recommendation to the selectmen for payment. Is there a motion to motion?
Motion?
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Let me poll everybody. Dave Billings,
Yes.
Ruth Townsend,
yes,
Dick Malcolm,
Yes.
Barry Goldman,
yes,
Ford Spalding, yes.
Al, just on this, have we gotten comments from Live, the exterior commissioner?
The building envelope commissioner,
Yeah.
yes, yeah. So one of these invoices here is actually from them. It's a Thrive. Yep. Like I
Yes,
said,
I'm just saying, have we gotten comments?
they have been involved with the submittals. Yeah. Yep.
Okay, that's fine.
Yep.
No,
Yeah.
I like them. They're a good
They've
group.
they've also had a few conference calls with us on some of our details and stuff too, so it's
Okay,
been great.
no, good. Good, Dave's very good.
Yeah,
Right.
and then they also requested the kickoff meeting with the installers on January, like the second week of January. So we're gonna have that soon.
The waterproofer? Okay,
Yep, the building commissioning agent with the, you know, the installers, yep.
Okay.
And Dave Barry, you know, anytime you want to go on the site, you know, you're welcome, so. Director's office.
Yep. Okay, so director's office, what you see highlighted and for what you see highlighted is basically where we are at on the process. FMA was authorized on November 30th by the Board of Selectmen to study the lounge space. They're currently working on that, and we're anticipating that study to be complete next week. Ford circulated the study for the open office area and the COA storage earlier, a couple days ago. The plan is to on the next building committee meeting on January 8th to review all three options: the lounge space, COA, all of the studies that FMA did, and take a vote on, you know, what option, if any, I guess, the building committee wants to recommend.
And with that, we're gonna have the design plans for each option. We're gonna have the time to get it done and go through that, and also the total cost. So people will be able to have we will have a comparison, and then the selectmen will have a comparison.
Well, we won't know what the cost is until we've got the design laid out.
Well, you're right. It's gonna be an estimated cost before bidding. That's exactly right. But we're gonna have another vote once everything's in, to proceed to construction. Okay. Going.
I do want to clarify, Janice, I don't think, you know, you guys are providing a cost estimate for the various options, right?
No,
Yeah, so what we'll have is you know, right now, just a rough order of magnitude number that M. O'Connor threw around, which is around $50,000, and then we'll have the pricing once, you know, FMA completes the construction documents for whatever option we
Yeah.
choose.
That's correct.
yeah, Al, I mean, if they're willing, when we're done with the layouts, you might just want to have them take a quick look at them, right?
Mhm.
And see if, you know, if one has more walls versus doors or whatever, you know, it might make them beef one up a little bit more than the other, just to give you a little bit of scale. But I think it'll be very general numbers. So, you know, it shouldn't take them too long, but it might be worth it.
I agree.
That's a good idea. Thanks, Denise. Yeah, I mean, and you know, as you can see, where you know, it looks like there's a number of other activities that need to take place before we can, you know, should we vote on one of these options, you know, authorize the contractor to proceed. So we're getting a little bit close to their start of framing.
Dave Billings had some questions today. He shot an email. Do you want to just describe those, Dave? And we've sent that over to Michael Blanchard for information because we don't have it. So
Yeah, it's without a real understanding of the program for this director's office, then we're just guessing. You know, this is a new program that we're being asked to put in the building, which is fine. But until we really understand what this role is it really public facing? Is it a full-time position? How much does it need a conference room or a conference area within the office? You know, if this is enough, I don't know. I'm kind of just looking at this.
and this job description, we have not really taken a look at as a committee. At least I haven't.
Yeah, I didn't even know we had one. So
So I think
I'm just asking that the town tell us what they're envisioned for this space is, and then we can make, you know, guide the architects on the best solution. And then I think we also need to go through COA and Park and Rents so that they have comments on it. I mean, we've gone through a big program and a process to develop the program in this for this building, and I think we need to make sure that this thing fits appropriately in.
So I'm hoping that Michael will talk to the selectmen and get some answers to your questions that you defined, and that will help the architect as they go through this. In the meantime, they have to keep working on it because we have a time schedule that's extremely tight. But I think this job description, I'm not sure I have even gone through, so.
Yeah, this is from like back in March, I think, that this was put together.
But Mike, it's in Mike Blanchard's hands right now, and we'll see what they come back with.
Yeah,
Okay.
and Michael Blanchard did say that he is aware of this job description. So I know he's seen it before. So I think some of the details, like, you know, like full-time position, I believe they said that, you know, it is going to be a full-time position, but some of the other details, I don't, you know, maybe we don't have
The
access
issue
to.
is, eventually, I assume it has to be approved by the town at a town meeting. And if the position isn't asked for, which it probably should be, the budget will be, and the budget needs to be shown very clearly, and then the town will be able to vote for it. As we all know, at the last town meeting, it was rejected. So
Yeah,
operating on a program that, to my knowledge, was rejected. But on the other hand, the selectmen want us to move forward, so I think we need to.
okay.
So that's yeah, so that's it for the director's office. Any other comments or questions on the director's office? Good.
So we're gonna be ready the first week in January?
Janice?
Yeah, so we're wrapping up the third location next week.
Okay,
And so we can probably, you know, just put together our thoughts for you all on the different options.
okay.
But
Yeah,
you,
I think it's gonna be important to show them sort of side by side as best as we can, and
Yeah.
could you give us the present configuration of the space and give us sort of an overview of your thoughts on the three options, just in general?
Oh, these ones here. Okay. Yep. So option one is kind of the option that moves the least amount of architecture as it's planned now. So that's basically just taking away the workstation that we had planned for, you know, anyone in this position or just a third person with Parks and Rec. And, you know, it kind of changes the plan the least amount, I would say. So if you wanted to implement this in the future rather than build it now, this would probably be the one you would go with, because you could, you know, more easily build this one in the future. Although I will say, if you wanted to put off building this to a later date, we would be recommending that you bring the infrastructure to the space anyways. So any one of these, you know, ultimately we could redesign in a manner that it could be built now with one office, and, you know, you could build out another office later. That's mostly because a lot of the HVAC systems and whatnot, we would need to bring refrigerant piping up to the roof and all sorts of things that you're not going to be wanting to get into ceilings and taking down finishes, you know, throughout the public areas later to get that through. We would still be recommending bringing the infrastructure to the area. So that's option one. Essentially what we do is we end up with one office that's around 120 square feet. It allows you to have a couple different office layouts, one of which allows you to face the door on the larger office. The smaller office is around 82 square feet. But again, that is leaving most of the layout pretty similar to what it was before, kind of leaving the shared office space, which houses the printer, a small refrigerator, a storage space for paper and whatnot, kind of tucked away and out of view. The other two options are kind of flipping it a little bit, which would put that shared workstation in view a little bit more. We don't think it'll be unsightly, but you know, it's not something we had originally planned for. The option two is essentially just trying to get the offices to a similar size, still allowing one to be about 120 square feet. But the second one, we would be able to grow to be about 95 square feet. That gives us a little more options with the furniture, which we go into on the next pages. So it just offers more options for someone who may want to use the office, whether they want to be facing the door, whether you know, they'd rather be facing the window and have a small little seating area behind them, things like that. Option 3 was us saying, what if we made the offices the same size? Where does that leave us? And so that would be similar to number 2, but you know, we just push and pull a little bit more, and that allows us to get both offices the same size. And
we
that
are
way,
not- in this, we're not delegating who's going to be in what office at all. At this point, we're just designing offices, and then powers that be later on can decide who's going to sit in them.
Mhm.
This
Okay.
is the least expensive, probably the least expensive alternative. It also, in my opinion, it gets the people that need to be in the front of the building and monitoring the building in the right place.
Is this a time, I have a couple of comments on just some questions on design. I don't know if this is the time to bring this up or not.
Why not?
Okay. I just, so when I looked at these options, I was thinking about the directors, the community center director's office, and the desire of the selectmen to make sure that this is kind of front and center. And when I was looking at these, I was thinking, well, why wouldn't you want to place the director's office on the north side of this cluster of offices? Excuse me, on the Springdale Ave side. So when you walk into this general office space, it would be the area kind of behind the elevator, because that's more front and center to the community center. And
So-
then the other part of that is I know Park and Rec had mentioned they wanted to be on the south side so that they could visually see what's going on in the playgrounds.
Yeah, we had looked at that. We didn't offer it because it's kind of landlocked there, so we would not be able to offer a window to that office if we were to tuck it in behind the elevator there.
Yeah, and I was thinking about that also, and I was thinking, well, you've got a glass, you know, you're getting light from the entry area and the foyer area, I would think.
We are. It's just it's a little bit, you know, parity, right? So we've got 2 other directors in the building that would both have offices with windows. We could certainly have it as a proposal. It's just, you know, would it end up?
Well, and the
Feeling
issue
a
is
little-
also the functionality between the 2 directors. I'm not sure is vastly different. So I think it's an interesting issue.
And then it gets a little crunchy. It seems like with any one of these designs with this workstation kind of in the open area. Is there enough? It looks that space, yeah, right where the cursor is. When you walk through between that workstation, right above where the 4 7.5 dimension is, that looks, you know, you're kind of getting pinched. You're going to see, let's say, a director, and you got to walk by somebody else's workstation, kind of in a pinched area to access kind of a major stakeholder in the building.
Yeah.
That kind of bothered me a bit.
And Dick, the person at that desk that we're looking at may well be the exact same person that's sitting outside monitoring people, you know, and helping them check in, check out, answering questions. I'm just guessing. I don't know how many staff members we're going to have in this area, but the idea originally was to have a person who would not be a director of any kind monitoring people as they come in and out. And they might also be sitting at that desk, because I think that's all glass there, am I correct?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So they can watch it. So, you know, I get, instead of, somebody's got to always be at that outside desk available to it when somebody comes in, so they can give them directions, make sure they I assume they're gonna be checking in somehow with a card or something, and
Are they?
I don't know. That's what I
Yeah,
would
it's-
assume. That's what it was discussed way back when, but
Yeah,
whether
no,
that's the case today, I don't know.
I remember, but I was up in the air. It's, you know, you go in a lot of centers and there's, you know, you just go to your event.
A lot of them, at least, you know, you check in and you scan a card, so. CMAC was working on it, but they're no longer here, so I'm not sure who's being responsible for that.
So there's no clear definition of the monitoring?
Not to my knowledge anymore, Barry, because I think the selectmen have taken over that responsibility. I could be wrong. I know it's not our responsibility.
Al, this was something that I emailed you about that Mark Galoni had asked me. This was to do with the security of the building. I mean, I think it's on 2 levels. It's people coming into the building and checking in, which the COA have a system already like that, where people can check in for their events. And Mark was being asked by Carl, I think, at the town, Carl Warnick, about keys for doors. And I think Mark was under the understanding that we would be looking at card security, right? So you had a card to get you into different rooms rather than, and that was actually access, not just logging in for an event.
There is card access to limited areas, but you're going to need keys at other areas.
Yeah, I don't think we
Not-
have a card access system.
We do have a card access system to the offices themselves, but the inner offices and things do not. So
Okay.
there still will be some keys, but there is card access to certain areas.
Okay, that's probably going to go a long way to answering Mark's question. So thank you, Janice.
But Carl Warnick should have, he's getting the direction from somebody, so he should have some knowledge of that.
Yeah, so what Carl is putting together is the keying schedule. So all doors that won't be on the card reader, you know, you're going to have a master key that opens everything, and then you need to have other tiers of keys that they need to, you know, who gets into what rooms.
And is Carl doing that for you guys?
Carl does that with the contractor, the keying
Okay.
schedule that the town wants. Yep.
Okay.
So who's sitting
Al,
with
you
this?
can scratch. Sorry, Dick. Al,
No,
you can
no,
scratch
I
that.
was gonna change the subject, so keep going on the.
I'll just quickly finish it off. Al, you can scratch that off your to-do list then. I'll report back to Mark and let him know.
Sounds good. And I could, you know, if you need more details as to what offices, you know, have access and you know exactly what spaces, we can get that for you.
Thanks. Thank you both.
Mhm.
Over to you, Dick.
So this, I'm just going back to so this, like, I'm gonna call it like it's like a welcome desk. So that's gonna be staffed. So is that, is that been?
So where this landed in talking with COA and Parks and Rec was that there would be a welcome desk in the lobby area, and it could be manned or it could be unmanned, as long as they found technology that they felt would work. So we've always been thinking of the desk as something that would have enough space for either 2 iPads or potentially a computer and an iPad. But the option has always been that it could be manned by either someone volunteering or someone on a fairly regular schedule that would be at the desk out in the lobby area. We left kind of a more gracious entry into the Parks and Rec area, thinking that there could be an opportunity for someone even to sit in there sometimes if they wanted to, or, you know, like a small waiting area, but that those 2 desks would have visual through the glass to the lobby as well. So if that desk was unmanned, you know, someone would be able to see, you know, someone flagging them down, or they'd be able to come right into the office and ask someone a question. So really what we were going for was flexibility. You know, if you ended up not being able to man the desk, it would still be able to run. But if that was the wish of everyone to man the desk, then you could have it manned.
Yeah. And if you all remember, this is exactly what we did all through the programming area, you know, with the communities. What Janice described is exactly what was planned for And it was the direction we were going in until it was changed.
So do you even, just throwing it out there, do you even need the glass partition then?
Well, they do want security to that office to be able to shut it down at night. That is one of the doors that has the card reader on it, is the door into the Parks and Rec area.
And I think you definitely, you gotta have, it's important, you have two entrances in the building and somebody should really be monitoring, you know. This is a day and age where you need to be aware of security and who's going in and out of a building. And we also talked about where they're going. We wanted people to say what room they were gonna be going to, so we know who's in the rooms in case there's an emergency of some kind. I mean, a school's different, I know, but that's what we've done at the schools, the two schools we've worked on, is we know where people are, we know what they're doing.
Well, that's kind of why I bring it up. I'm just, you know, as a welcome desk, should it be within an office area? Or should the welcome desk be outside of that area, i.e. if you have
Yeah.
where the glass partitions are?
It's
So
designed.
the welcome desk is meant to be outside in the lobby area. And the way that we're conceiving it is it either could be pushed against the wall for it to be unmanned and have self check-in, where, you know, anyone in that office would be able to see what was happening, people checking in and out on their own, or it could be manned, but the intention was for it to be out in the lobby.
Yeah,
That's
and
where we're
COA,
programming.
just to enhance that, COA, I remember requested, it was said that like for the luncheons or something, they wanted to be out in the lobby to greet people who are going to be going to
Right.
the lunch or whatever.
Right.
So I'm sorry to beat this up, and I don't mean to, I don't want to run up a lot of time on this, but so why is it behind then a glass partition? If
It's
the welcome desk to
it's
meet
not
and
that
greet?
that is a Parks and Rec staff desk.
Okay, I'm sorry, I
yeah.
misunderstood. I thought that desk, that workstation was the welcome desk.
No.
No, it's out in the lobby. It's that little.
Okay, I didn't get that. I'm sorry.
It's right in this, yeah, that area, you can't see what I'm moving, that's correct,
Yeah.
that's where it is.
Okay, my misunderstanding then. I thought that
Yeah.
workstation was the welcome station, so it didn't make
So
sense.
yeah, sorry, it's a little unclear because we've had to kind of, you know, change gears a little bit. Originally, we had 3 workstations out in that area. One could be for a potential facility director, and 2 would be for Mark. If the facility director wasn't hired, then we always had that extra desk where we were saying, oh, that would be great for an intern to also be able to sit there and help monitor. But the intention of the welcome desk is that it will be out in the lobby.
Okay,
Yeah.
I think that
Thank you.
That's what it was before.
oh, welcome desk. Okay, I see.
Yeah. So yeah, what happened was so Parks and Rec did hire a second person. So they will be manning both those desks if the office goes in here.
So the programming for Park and Rec then is 3, the director plus 2
Plus
workstations.
2. Yes. Yep.
Okay.
I'm glad we had this little review.
Citizen comments, do we have
We
anybody?
have no citizens that are not on the committee on there, and Woody Weiss is from the warrant committee, so.
Okay, and lastly, any new business?
Anybody want anything else going forward for the 8th? All right. Next is our next meeting is scheduled for January 8th at 6:30. It'll be by Zoom. And just remember, there's a service for Bob Springett this Friday at 3 p.m. at the Dover Church. Anything else? Now I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
Motion?
For a second,
Second.
I'll poll the board. Dave Billings,
Yes.
Ruth Townsend,
Yes.
Dick Malcolm,
Yes.
Barry Goldman,
Yes.
Ford Spalding. Yes, thank you all for coming. And Have a great holiday. I guess we're not gonna see each other until it's over with. So I hope everybody has a great holiday and a little bit of time to be with family and friends.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Ford.
you, everybody.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Goodbye, y'all.